Chapter 12:10. The moment Fong Yinglong appeared, Yi Weikong sensed that the situation was already out of his control. He was aware of the grudge between the High Heaven sect and the Imperial Sky Pavilion. But it was precisely because of this that the High Heaven sect shouldn't be here. He should be watching the tigers fight from the sidelines. Yi Weikong stared at Fong Yinglong and said in a deep voice, "I really didn't expect the High Heaven sect to take action this time. Do you think the threat of my Cold River City is even greater than that of your old enemy, the Imperial Sky Pavilion?" Fong Yinglong nodded and said, "That's right. Your threat is indeed greater than that of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. The High Heaven sect and the Imperial Sky Pavilion have been fighting for tens of thousands of years, so we know the Imperial Sky Pavilion very well. We know where their upper and lower limits are. However, I don't know much about your Cold River City. An unknown existence is the most worthy of caution." Hearing the conversation between Yi Weikong and Fong Yinglong, Chu Xiu suddenly felt that the Daoyuotian people still had a lot of strong points. For example, they were very straightforward in their actions and words. They rarely played games. For example, if Fong Yinglong were to be replaced by the people from the Righteous Path sects in the lower realm right now, they would definitely talk about how they could not allow Fong Yinglong to destroy the Imperial Sky Pavilion in order to ensure the East's peace and stability. However, Fong Yinglong was very straightforward. "I feel that you are a greater threat than the Imperial Sky Pavilion, so I will obstruct you and not let you succeed." There was no such thing as a big reason. It was just that it concerned the interests of the sect, so he had to do it. However, Fong Yinglong paused and looked at Chu Xiu. "Of course, this is only one of the reasons. The other reason is that this Chu is eloquent and has a profound understanding of the Tao of domination. The conditions he proposed are something that the High Heaven sect can't refuse." As soon as these words were spoken, Chu Xiu immediately felt Yi Weikong's gaze turn towards him. And his gaze contained killing intent. Chu Xiu. He didn't feel that Fong Yinglong was straightforward. Although he was a martial immortal expert, his thoughts were very dirty. He didn't forget to make a junior cultivator hate him at a time like this. Looking at Fong Yinglong, Yi Weikong suddenly smiled. "Fong Yinglong, when was the last time we fought?" "A few decades or 100 years ago. At that time, you were not even a martial immortal. The #1 expert in the Eastern region. I have never fought with you for this position. It has been yours from the very beginning. This time, I want to experience exactly how strong you, the #1 expert in the Eastern region, are. A martial immortal level expert would not retreat so easily." Last time, Yi Weikong had only wanted to teach Chu Xiu a lesson, but ended up running into a primeval sovereign. It didn't matter that time, so he retreated. This time he had gathered the elites of the entire Cold River City to destroy the Imperial Sky Pavilion in one go. How could he possibly retreat? The extremely powerful Lord of Cold River City in the past would not retreat twice in the same place. As soon as Yi Weikong finished speaking, he took a step forward. The aura around him was like a whirlwind, and it gave rise to waves of icy storms. The shrill cold wind mixed with snowflakes drifted down. As Yi Weikong's aura rose explosively to the peak, an area of several hundred feet around him was instantly enveloped by the winter snow. Chu Xiu felt as though he was in the Driftsnow city of the northern realms in the lower realms. Chu Xiu could not tell the aura of a martial immortal expert. He only knew that the other party was very strong. However, Fong Yinglong's expression changed. "Seventh Heaven Martial Immortal. You've actually stepped into the 7th heaven." Previously, there had been rumors in the eastern region that Yi Weikong had the strength of the 6th heaven, and could reach the 7th heaven if he exerted his full strength. But now he actually had the strength of the 7th heaven. Zhong Qiushui's expression also turned solemn. When he fought with Yi Weikong last time, the other party actually held back. His true strength of the 7th heaven was most likely prepared for the High Heaven sect. Although the martial immortal realm was divided into 9 levels in detail, everyone still habitually thought that the 1st to the 3rd heaven was a world, the 4th to the 6th heaven was another world, and the 7th to the 9th heaven was the real peak of the martial immortal realm. The difference of 1 level between the 6th heaven and the 7th heaven was actually very big. Therefore, when Yi Weikong exerted his full strength, it was close to the 7th heaven. However, the gap between the 7th heaven and the 8th heaven was not that big. Now Yi Weikong was not only a cause for fear, but also fully qualified to challenge Fang Yinglong, the #1 expert in the eastern region. There was no expression on Yi Weikong's face, but behind him, layers of frost storms danced, and finally turned into a huge ice dragon roaring. Yi Weikong stretched out his hand, and the huge ice dragon turned into a dragon-shaped long saber in his hand. In the dragon-shaped long saber, frost flowed. It did not contain his world power, but a kind of world rules. Yi Weikong was equivalent to turning a divine ability into a weapon, and holding it in his hand. Fang Yinglong took a step forward. 9 dragons roared around him, and golden dragons made of energy spiraled in the air, tearing at Yi Weikong. When martial immortals truly fought, the might they gave off was akin to a battle between deities. It was truly destructive. Thus, Fang Yinglong and Yi Weikong appeared in the air and fought fiercely. They did not land on the ground. However, Zhong Qiushui, who was standing next to Chu Xiu, had a conflicted expression, as if he didn't know if he should go or not. Chu Xiu said in confusion, "Pavilion Master, what are you waiting for? Even if we can't defeat Yi Weikong by joining hands with Fang Yinglong, we must at least seriously injure him. You wouldn't be thinking of watching the tigers fight, right?" Zhong Qiushui's expression turned a bit ugly. "What am I waiting for? One is an 8th level martial immortal, the other is a 7th level martial immortal. If I charge forward, I'm afraid I'll be the first one to be seriously injured." Chu Xiu said in surprise, "They're both martial immortals, and there's only a difference of a few heavens. Why is there such a huge difference?" Zhong Qiushui snorted coldly. "A difference of a few heavens? When you were at the True Fire Spirit Refinement Realm, you could easily kill Profound Insight Realm cultivators. How did you look at those ordinary True Fire Spirit Refinement Realm cultivators back then? That's how Fang Yinglong and Yi Weikong look at me now." Chu Xiu was speechless after hearing Zhong Qiushui's words. If that was the case, the difference was quite huge. However, even though Zhong Qiushui said that, he still charged forward and attacked Yi Weikong together with Fang Yinglong. Yi Weikong was seriously injured, and the Royal Sky Pavilion benefited the most from it. Besides, if he really didn't attack and angered Fang Yinglong, they would be dumbfounded. However, Zhong Qiushui was indeed a bit miserable. He had just charged forward when Yi Weikong smashed him down with a punch. Chu Xiu could only watch the battle between martial immortals. In fact, he couldn't even understand the battle between Fang Yinglong and Yi Weikong. So Chu Xiu didn't stay idle. With a wave of his hand, he ordered his subordinates and the cultivators of the Royal Sky Pavilion to attack Cold River City together. This time, Chu Xiu really didn't hold back. All the elites under him who had participated in the battle to exterminate Blood River Sect also charged forward with him. It didn't matter whether the Royal Sky Pavilion existed or not. What was important was that Cold River City had already viewed Chu Xiu as a thorn in its side. If he didn't seriously injure Yi Weikong, his Kangwu County would never have a day of peace. Chu Xiu had just stepped into the battlefield when Qi Wuhan, who was clad in icy blue armor, leaped in front of Chu Xiu. His eyes flickered with chilling killing intent. "Chu Xiu, if I had known this earlier, I would have killed you at all costs when I was in Lingluo County." At this time, Qi Wuhan was really regretful. At that time, he thought that he had attached great importance to Chu Xiu. He didn't expect that he didn't attach enough importance to Chu Xiu. Given Cold River City's size, they only had one chance to strike. If they failed to annihilate the Imperial Heaven Pavilion this time, they would not be able to make up for the manpower and resources they had consumed. The next time they struck, unless something unexpected happened to the Imperial Heaven Pavilion, Cold River City might have to wait for a very long time before they could accumulate such strength again. All this was because Chu Xiu had used some method to invite the High Heaven sect to attack. At all costs? Qi Wuhan, you're thinking too much. Even if you really wanted to kill me at all costs, the result might be worse than now. Qi Wuhan shouted angrily. He didn't want to talk nonsense with Chu Xiu anymore. He opened up his domain. Endless storms condensed in the domain and shrouded Chu Xiu directly. Yi Weikong was fighting desperately above, so he naturally had to fight desperately below. In fact, Cold River City really had no way out. After all, their foundation was the shallowest. If they didn't take advantage of the fact that Yi Weikong was still alive and Cold River City was at its peak to attack and lay a foundation, no one knew what the next generation would be like. The god domain around Chu Xiu opened up and directly bombarded Qi Wuhan with his domain. In the god domain, the 5 elements were in disorder, yin and yang were reversed, and a powerful force twisted and strangled everything. Qi Wuhan's domain was very fragile in front of Chu Xiu's domain. It was directly melted and swallowed up quickly. At this moment, Qi Wuhan looked at Chu Xiu as if he had seen a ghost. Everyone had a domain. Although different domain attributes did restrain each other, it also depended on the specific strength of the martial artist. Now, Chu Xiu's realm was obviously lower than his, but his domain completely restrained him. What kind of domain was this? Seeing that Chu Xiu's god domain had eroded his domain step by step, Qi Wuhan roared angrily. A huge ice dragon behind him roared, integrated into his fist wind, and directly punched at Chu Xiu. Wherever the punch passed, even the essence of heaven and earth seemed to be stagnant and frozen, but Chu Xiu didn't dodge. He also punched. The fire of internal force around his body was burning and blooming, and the qi and blood in his body had boiled to the extreme. Before Chu Xiu fought with Qi Wuhan, he knew that Qi Wuhan's ice soul divine power was extremely powerful and overbearing, which could freeze internal force, qi, blood, and even spirit. Therefore, at this time, Chu Xiu burned the fire of internal force to the extreme, making his qi and blood boil. Qi Wuhan couldn't freeze this pure physical strength. The 2 fists collided like an explosion of ice and fire. Chu Xiu's figure stood still, but Qi Wuhan was directly blasted away. Chapter 12:11. The last time Qi Wuhan had seen Chu Xiu fight was during the martial arts duel in Lingxiao City. At that time, Chu Xiu had yet to truly step into the mysterious heaven and earth realm. Therefore, Qi Wuhan's impression of Chu Xiu's strength also remained at that time. For others, there shouldn't be any changes in their strength in less than a year. However, for Chu Xiu, the difference in strength between the current him and him during the martial arts gamble was like heaven and earth. This world of difference was not because Chu Xiu had officially stepped into the mysterious heaven and earth realm, but because he had seen heavenly souls and thoroughly sorted out his martial arts. His control over his strength had reached the peak. Qi Wuhan looked at Chu Xiu in shock, but before he could recover from his shock, Chu Xiu had already attacked again. The fierce blade radiance on the formation seemed to have condensed into a substance and slashed towards the ground. Earth devastation, one of the 7 ultimate limits, was unleashed. The powerful force penetrated the ground, and in the next moment, the ground under Qi Wuhan's feet began to crack inch by inch. Countless blade lights rose up from under his feet, enveloping him within. There was a strange power in the blade radiance, as if the ground under Qi Wuhan's feet had produced a strong suction force, making it impossible for him to break free. In the next moment, layers of icicle armor began to appear around Qi Wuhan's body to resist the blade radiance. Although the icicles would be torn apart by the blade radiance in an instant, they condensed in the blink of an eye and consumed the power of the blade radiance. In the end, an ice dragon bloomed around Qi Wuhan's body, surrounding him to break free from the suction force and step into the air. However, at that moment, a blade radiance with an extreme sharpness that could cut through everything fell. It tore apart the icicles around Qi Wuhan's body, and directly tore apart the armor on his body. Qi Wuhan roared angrily, and his left hand grabbed onto Chu Xiu's formation. The extremely sharp formation tore open the web between his thumb and index finger. After the dark red blood flowed out, it turned into an icy blue color and spread up the knife god. This made Chu Xiu frown. He could feel that the cold blood had actually frozen the artifact spirit that had broken the formation. It was even freezing his physical body and stellar energy. As the heir of Cold River City, Qi Wuhan certainly had a trump card. Not everyone was like Chu Xiu, who could successfully grasp a divine ability at the true fire spirit refinement realm. But for people like Qi Wuhan, although they couldn't master divine abilities, they managed to control part of the power of divine abilities through various methods. For example, Lu Sanjin's small swords that had the power of divine powers, and now, Qi Wuhan had integrated the power of laws into his flesh and blood, using the power of his flesh and blood to drive the laws of heaven and earth. Under the suppression of the ice-cold blood, even though Chu Xiu had unleashed the true fire of his inner strength to its limits, he was still unable to melt it quickly. At this time, Qi Wuhan's right fist smashed down with a powerful force. The coldness condensed, and the ice crystal burst. Chu Xiu sneered, and also used his left fist to fight against Qi Wuhan with pure strength. He didn't fall into a disadvantageous position at all, and even faintly suppressed Qi Wuhan. Qi Wuhan already felt that something was wrong as he fought. Chu Xiu's physical strength was amazing. Even though he was at the peak of the mysterious enlightenment realm, he didn't have the upper hand in this kind of battle. In particular, although he had refined the power of laws into his flesh and blood, and he was using this power to suppress Chu Xiu's artifact spirit, and a part of his own power, what he lost was the power of qi and blood. Feeling that something was wrong, the next moment, a faint blue light bloomed in Qi Wuhan's eyes. The coldness went straight to the mind, trying to freeze Chu Xiu's primordial spirit. Cold River City was not good at primordial spirit secret methods. This kind of power to freeze primordial spirit was just a manifestation of the power of laws. But the next moment, Qi Wuhan's complexion changed. Because his divine light that could freeze primordial spirit directly penetrated Chu Xiu's body, and completely missed. Illusion again. Qi Wuhan secretly said that it was not good. He had long known that Chu Xiu had a very strange illusion, and even he couldn't see the flaws and weaknesses. He had just dispersed all his spiritual force around to investigate the surrounding movement, but in the next moment, his face suddenly darkened, and he secretly cursed. That was an illusion just now, but it was not the illusion he had imagined. His own hand was still on the blade, and the qi and blood integrated with the power of laws was still suppressing the power of Chu Xiu. How could Chu Xiu escape with an illusion? Therefore, the icy divine light just now was not avoided by Chu Xiu, but was forcibly resisted by him. Instead, Chu Xiu used an illusion to confuse him. At this time, Qi Wuhan wanted to withdraw his spiritual force, but it was too late. The powerful primordial spirit impact, like an arrow, penetrated his mind. It was an arrow condensed by the pure power of primordial spirit, extremely simple, without any auxiliary power. But because of this, Qi Wuhan, who had just spread out his spiritual force, could not defend. The power of primordial spirit exploded, and Qi Wuhan immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. His face turned pale, and his left hand finally broke away from the broken formation. The next moment, the scorching true fire of the sun, and the evil fire of world annihilation ignited around Chu Xiu at the same time. His figure began to directly soar, and in an instant, all the power around him was swallowed up by him. When the law phenomenon was performed, at this moment, Chu Xiu was like a powerful devil god, who could chase the clouds and the sun, and control the power of flames in the ancient legends. When his fist smashed down, there was a loud explosion. All the power around Qi Wuhan was completely shattered, his gang qi was broken, and his battle armor was shattered. He was blown away by Chu Xiu for dozens of feet, and a large amount of blood gushed out. The power of the law phenomenon only lasted for a time before it was stopped by Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu had used this magic many times, and now he could almost control the power in it perfectly, so he would not be completely sucked up by the power in it. At this time, Qi Wuhan was extremely miserable. The punch of the law phenomenon, which had reached the extreme power, almost shattered half of the bones and meridians in their bodies, and they were directly injured. He was the future heir of Cold River City, and he carried the ambition to destroy the Imperial Sky Pavilion and strengthen Cold River City in the future. In the end, all these things were blasted away in front of Chu Xiu's punch. Of course, these useless sorrowful things only existed in Qi Wuhan's mind for a little time, and then they were extinguished by him, because now was not the time to think about these things. Behind him, Chu Xiu had already slashed at him with a saber. Qi Wuhan fiercely gritted his teeth, and the remaining power around him was pushed to the extreme. The blood and qi in his whole body were suffused with an extremely cold color, and his body suddenly burst out like an ice arrow. Moreover, there was still a deep chill behind him, affecting Chu Xiu and delaying his power movement. Chu Xiu frowned slightly. In fact, this time if there was a chance he wanted to kill all the warriors in Cold River City here. He had completely fallen out with Cold River City. After killing ancestor Blood River, Cold River City was even more eager to get rid of him. If he took this opportunity to completely destroy Cold River City, his southern barbaric land would be much more stable in the future. However, Cold River City was not easy to deal with. Not to mention Yi Weikong, Qi Wuhan had a lot of trump cards. He only wanted to escape at all costs, so Chu Xiu really couldn't do anything to him. At this time, Chu Xiu was also struggling whether he should use the magical power of Clear Sky Reflecting Shadow to keep Qi Wuhan here. Once Clear Sky Reflecting Shadow was used, as long as Qi Wuhan was still in his sight, he would almost certainly die. However, when he was dealing with Luo Mo last time, Chu Xiu had already felt the power and powerful backlash of this move. Using it to deal with Qi Wuhan, no matter how he looked at it, it felt like using a dragon blade to kill a chicken. It was not worth it. Just as Chu Xiu was struggling, a wild laughter suddenly came. Even if the blood turns blue, it is still blood. With me, Blood Sea Demon Venerable Lu Jianghe here, no one can escape. Endless qi and blood converged into a mighty sea of blood, and strands of blood condensed from the sea of blood. As Lu Jianghe waved his hand, those blood strands directly wrapped around Qi Wuhan's body, affecting the power of qi and blood in his body. Qi Wuhan suddenly froze there, looking at Lu Jianghe with eyes full of resentment and hatred. At this time, Lu Jianghe had already stepped into the mysterious heaven and earth realm. With his strength foundation, even after the breakthrough, he directly skipped the early stage of mysterious heaven and earth realm, which needed to adapt to the power. In fact, Lu Jianghe was able to step into this realm thanks to the soul blood of Blood River ancestor that Chu Xiu brought back. There was only a small ball of soul blood, but it was used by Blood River ancestor to store the true spirit. It was not contaminated at all, and it was extremely pure. Although after Lu Jianghe obtained the small ball of qi and blood, he was still complaining that Chu Xiu was stingy and only brought back such a small thing for him. After he began to refine the small ball of qi and blood, he immediately felt the power coming from the soul blood. He immediately stopped complaining and began to cultivate in seclusion. Previously, Lu Jianghe was already at the peak of the true fire spirit refinement realm. If it wasn't because he was too lazy to cultivate in seclusion, he might even have reached the mysterious heaven and earth realm by now. Therefore, at this time, when Lu Jianghe broke through, his strength was so powerful that it did not seem like he was at the early stage of mysterious heaven and earth realm at all. With Lu Jianghe holding back Qi Wuhan, the formation-breaking tool in Chu Xiu's hand bloomed with extreme sharpness. When the knife slashed down, Qi Wuhan's hand formed a seal to block it, but one of his arms was instantly torn off. At the next moment, Qi Wuhan roared angrily, and the ice-blue qi and blood around his body condensed in his other hand, flashing with extremely strong power. However, at this time, Lu Jianghe sneered and said, "You don't learn from your mistakes. How dare you play with qi and blood in front of me, Blood Sea Demon Venerable." As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Jianghe waved his hand, and the ice-blue qi and blood in Qi Wuhan's body began to run wildly and flow backward. The instant backlash caused Qi Wuhan to vomit a large mouthful of blood, and his aura became extremely low. Just as Lu Jianghe was about to say something proudly, the formation-breaking tool's extreme sharpness had already fallen, and Qi Wuhan's head was directly cut off. Lu Jianghe turned his head and looked at Chu Xiu with dissatisfaction. "You stole my head." Chapter 12:12. Lu Jianghe was very upset that Chu Xiu had stolen his kill. He wasn't a monster like Chu Xiu, who killed heaven and earth mysterious state cultivators like killing chickens when he was in the true fire spirit refinement state. This was the first time he could kill someone in the heaven and earth mysterious state, but Chu Xiu had stolen his kill. He was very dissatisfied. However, Lu Jianghe was tactful and didn't complain about this. Instead, he went to Chu Xiu and mumbled, "Official Chu, Cult Master Chu, now that I'm in the heaven and earth mysterious state, shouldn't you consider changing my title to Blood Sea Lord? Patriarch Dugu had 4 demon lords in the past. You can't have one less, can you? This way, I'll be Blood Sea Lord. Old Wei has prestige and has worked hard all these years, so there must be a place for him. As for Old Shang, although he isn't very capable and has a bad temper, He's in the heaven and earth mysterious state. Give him the title of Demon Lord. Keep the last one. Let's see who steps into the heaven and earth mysterious state first between Lu Fengxian and Mei Qinglian. What do you think? Compared to the head of a heaven and earth mysterious state cultivator, Lu Jianghe cared more about the position of Blood Sea Lord. Lu Jianghe had been obsessed with this position for 500 years, so much so that it had almost become an obsession. However, Chu Xiu didn't care about Lu Jianghe. Instead, he looked at the sky with a grave expression. With Qi Wuhan's death, Yi Weikong had gone mad. Qi Wuhan was actually very important to Yi Weikong, because he was the successor he had chosen. He was the next leader of Cold River City, and the future of Cold River City. Therefore, to Yi Weikong, Qi Wuhan was even more important than his own son. But now Qi Wuhan had died in the hands of Chu Xiu. What did this mean? It meant that Cold River City had almost no future. After all, Cold River City had only risen for one generation, so its foundation was relatively weak. Although as long as Yi Weikong was here, it was still possible to nurture another successor, but there wasn't enough time. Could a successor that was nurtured in a hurry compare to Qi Wuhan? Yi Weikong didn't know. Therefore, in his opinion, the future of Cold River City was uncertain after Qi Wuhan's death. With a furious roar, Yi Weikong's power erupted to its peak. He even had the feeling of putting his life on the line. This kind of imposing power instantly caused Zhong Qiushui to cough up blood. Even Fang Yinglong could only retreat, not daring to face it head-on. After all, Fang Yinglong was only here to help. It was fine as long as the Imperial Sky Pavilion was not destroyed and the balance in the East region was not affected. Why should he fight to the death with Yi Weikong? Therefore, under this kind of situation, Yi Weikong was able to unleash his godly might, heavily injuring Zhong Qiushui and forcing Fang Yinglong to retreat. However, his own consumption was not small. He glanced coldly at Zhong Qiushui and Fang Yinglong, and also looked deeply at Chu Xiu. Yi Weikong directly turned around and left, retreating with the people of Cold River City. Although he was angry now, Yi Weikong also knew that if he didn't leave now, he wouldn't have another chance. Qi Wuhan was dead, and Cold River City had no successor, but its future was uncertain. But if he were to die here today, then Cold River City would really be destroyed. Seeing that Yi Weikong wanted to escape, Chu Xiu hurriedly shouted at Fang Yinglong, "Sect Master Fang, if Yi Weikong leaves safely now, High Heaven Sect will have endless troubles in the future." Fang Yinglong glanced at Chu Xiu and snorted coldly, "Of course I know." Although Fang Yinglong was not a cultivator of the same generation as Yi Weikong, he also knew that Yi Weikong was a person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. If he returned to Cold River City unscathed, he would definitely find a way to take revenge on High Heaven Sect. Therefore, Fang Yinglong also hung behind Yi Weikong, attacking unhurriedly. The Eastern Territory needed balance. Unless Emperor Sky Pavilion and Cold River City were destroyed at the same time, it would be better for both Cold River City and Emperor Sky Pavilion to weaken, leaving High Heaven Sect alone to maintain the balance in the Eastern Territory. Because Yi Weikong had to escape while protecting his disciples of Cold River City, he had suffered a lot of injuries at this time. However, he forced himself to retreat to the edge of the southern barbaric land, close to Lingluo County. 9 dragons coiled around Fang Yinglong, directly supporting a heaven and earth, trapping Yi Weikong in it. Yi Weikong also sensed that this should be Fang Yinglong's last attack, and it was also his strongest attack. Therefore, in the next moment, Yi Weikong's aura had completely condensed into his body. His seemingly light finger descended, but the boundless cold air in midair condensed into a huge finger that descended. Everywhere it passed, everything was frozen. Even time was frozen in the same way. This was Yi Weikong's unique and powerful divine ability, the freezing ice divine finger. Although it sounded ordinary, and even resembled a low-level martial skill, it was a genuine and powerful divine ability that could change the laws of heaven and earth. The 9 dragons that seemed capable of tearing apart the heavens and earth were frozen in midair. An endless power was roaring. At that instant, Chu Xiu seemed to have seen the end of the world. There was no longer any color in midair. He could only see the void being torn apart by the 2 powers, and the storm that had turned into astral energy howling furiously. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes, and pushed the heaven's sun gazing at air to the extreme, wanting to see the rules of the battle. Unfortunately, the cultivation of a level 8 martial immortal was simply too powerful. Even though Chu Xiu's eyes had turned completely red, so much so that his eyes were bloodshot, he was only barely able to see the faint power of laws. But to Chu Xiu's relief, Yi Weikong couldn't hold on much longer. After all, Fang Yinglong was a level higher than him, and he had the inheritance of High Heaven Sect, so in terms of power, he was still stronger than Yi Weikong. The two sides had already fought to this extent. Even if Fang Yinglong didn't want to fight to the death, he couldn't stop it this time. Just when Chu Xiu thought that the two of them were going to fight to the death, in the depths of the southern barbaric land, clouds of smoke rolled down, and a powerful aura suddenly erupted like a volcano. The aura actually overlapped with Yi Weikong's and Fang Yinglong's aura, and directly shrouded the area visible to the naked eye. The aura that erupted in the southern barbaric land didn't belong to anyone but the pure world Qi. With the addition of this aura, it gave Yi Weikong and Fang Yinglong some leeway. The two of them restrained their power almost at the same time. Fang Yinglong's complexion was only a little pale, but Yi Weikong's aura was extremely unstable. Obviously, because of the fierce battle and the divine ability he used, his source energy was injured. The two of them looked at each other, and a touch of surprise appeared in their eyes. They shouted in a low voice, "It's a blessed paradise." As a martial immortal level expert, as well as the leader of a peak power in the Daluo heaven, they were all people who had seen the world. Thus they naturally knew what was going on. That aura was the aura of the birth of a blessed abode. Currently, the interior of the Daluo Ocean was controlled by the major sections. There was basically no undiscovered blessed paradise. But in the southern barbaric land, an undeveloped area, it was normal for a blessed paradise to appear. In fact, Li Wuxiang had been to the place where the aura of the blessed paradise appeared before. Back then, due to the barbarian tribes' uprising, Li Wuxiang suppressed them and killed quite a few people. However, he didn't discover the blessed paradise. Perhaps it was because Li Wuxiang's power wasn't enough, but this time, 2 8th level martial immortal experts were fighting fiercely. Furthermore, it was a battle of life and death using their full power. It caused the surrounding natural laws to change, and thus the power of the blessed paradise was triggered, causing it to appear. The blessed abode had already appeared in the world. Moreover, Fang Yinglong only wanted to suppress Cold River City. He didn't want to force Yi Weikong into a life and death struggle. Therefore, he didn't continue to attack and directly headed in the direction of the blessed abode. The blessed paradise was formed by the natural world. It was the first time a blessed paradise had been opened. Perhaps there were some powerful existences formed by the natural world, and some dangers. But at the same time, the blessed paradise that hadn't been opened for countless years also contained countless natural treasures. Following behind the two people, Chu Xiu's eyes revealed a hint of pity. The blessed paradise's appearance was too untimely. Even if it was a few dozen breaths later, the outcome of the battle between Fang Yinglong and Yi Weikong would be decided. But looking at Yi Weikong's appearance, his source energy should have suffered heavy damage. At least, he wouldn't be able to fight for a period of time. The appearance of such an unexploited blessed paradise was a great opportunity for anyone. Right now, the opportunity was right in front of Chu Xiu. Naturally, Chu Xiu wouldn't sit back and do nothing. Although Fang Yinglong was there, and the martial immortal expert definitely got the most out of it, it was still good for him to go in and have a sip of the soup. After following Yi Weikong and Fang Yinglong into the depths of the southern barbaric land, Chu Xiu finally saw the appearance of the so-called blessed paradise. The blessed paradise was a pure space. To be precise, it should be a subsidiary space of the Daluo Ocean. It was an independent but attached existence to the Daluo Ocean. The mystic worlds in the lower realm should also be regarded as a kind of blessed paradise. Even the green capital space where Shang Tianliang was located was a blessed paradise. The blessed paradise that Chu Xiu had seen before was formed after 10,000 years of transformation and accumulation in High Heaven Sect and Imperial Sky Pavilion. The pure natural blessed paradise in front of him really surprised Chu Xiu. There was no entrance to the blessed paradise in front of him, but it was like a huge grave mound, sitting on the ground and stretching for hundreds of meters. The aura it exuded was incredibly pure and powerful. Fang Yinglong stared at the huge mound and frowned. A natural spirit array? At present, the huge mound had yet to be exposed, and there was a huge natural spirit array hidden under it. Generally speaking, a blessed paradise that could give birth to a spirit array of this level was not ordinary. While there were opportunities, there were also great dangers. Chapter 12-13. Fang Yinglong couldn't open the blessed cave paradise that suddenly appeared. Although Fang Yinglong could break the spirit array by force, he could easily destroy the blessed cave paradise. Fang Yinglong spoke indifferently as he gazed at Yi Weikong. Yi Weikong, your luck is very good. Lead the members of your Cold River City and retreat. Otherwise, your Cold River City won't even be able to keep its last trace of survival. Yi Weikong snorted coldly and said, My Cold River City can't survive. Is this what your High Heaven sect wants? Fang Yinglong, your High Heaven sect is too calculative. It's fine if you want to maintain your position as the overlord of the East Territory, but there will come a day when you can't control the situation. After saying that, Yi Weikong turned around and left. Before leaving, he looked deeply at Chu Xiu with undisguised killing intent in his eyes. Chu Xiu looked back without fear. Because of the South Barbaric Land, the conflict between him, Yi Weikong, and Cold River City could no longer be reconciled. Anyway, a great enmity had been formed. So what if he bore a grudge? Although it didn't feel good to bear a grudge from a martial immortal powerhouse, Fang Yinglong said to Chu Xiu calmly, According to our previous agreement, I've already helped you take care of Yi Weikong. Now your Imperial Sky Pavilion should also keep your promise and hand over that prefecture. Don't make me, White Sovereign City, go and take it myself. Chu Xiu said lightly, Don't worry. The Imperial Sky Pavilion won't go back on its promise. Anyway, that province belonged to the Imperial Sky Pavilion, not him, Chu Xiu. Of course, he wouldn't feel bad about it. Glancing at the big tomb, Fang Yinglong said in a deep voice, When this blessed cave paradise appears, there will definitely be a lot of powerhouses who will enter and compete for it. In particular, the place where this blessed cave paradise will appear is very awkward. It doesn't belong to our East Territory, but to the South Barbaric Land. So when the time comes, there may be big sects and powerhouses from the South Territory coming to snatch it. The cultivators of the East Territory should unite together to fight against the outsiders first, and then distribute the benefits. When you go back, tell Zhong Qiushui about this. I'll go back to High Heaven Sect, and invite some array grandmasters to come and crack the natural spirit array in this blessed cave paradise. With that, Fang Yinglong turned around and left. He was not afraid that the Royal Sky Pavilion would be the first to enter the blessed paradise. Zhong Qiushui was also a martial immortal level expert, and the Royal Sky Pavilion also had their own heritage. He should know the consequences of forcibly breaching the blessed paradise. A moment later, Zhong Qiushui also rushed over from behind. However, Zhong Qiushui looked a little miserable. His face was pale, and even Chu Xiu could feel that his aura seemed to be a little unstable. Chu Xiu asked in surprise, Pavilion Master, your injuries are this serious? Zhong Qiushui snorted coldly and said, Did your master not teach you the difference between martial immortals? A gap of 1 heavenly layer can be made up for, but I'm 3 or 4 heavenly layers weaker than them. To be able to block their power is already not bad. This kind of thing was actually not shameful. After all, these two people, one was recognized as the strongest in the Eastern Domain, and the other was also the Lord of Cold River City, who had risen to fame in the whole Dalyu Ocean in the recent hundreds of years. Yi Weikong left. Chu Xiu pointed to the large tomb in front of him and said, The power caused by their fight was too strong, and it drew out this hidden blessed paradise. Naturally, they couldn't fight. However, this is also a good thing. Our Royal Sky Pavilion is close to the water, and when this blessed paradise is opened, we can also share some of the benefits. Zhong Qianqiu sighed and shook his head. I'm afraid it won't be that easy. I'd rather not have this blessed paradise. It's best if I get rid of that old guy Yi Weikong. This time, that old guy Yi Weikong was seriously injured and didn't die. When he makes a move again, I'm afraid it won't be so easy to deal with him. Also, Although this blessed paradise is the closest to my royal sky pavilion, it's deep in the southern barbaric land. I'm afraid it will attract those people from the southern domain. Those people from the southern domain are not to be trifled with. I'll stay here for a while and wait for the people from High Heaven sect to come before fighting for it. Matters involving the two domains are no longer something my sect can influence. It's up to High Heaven sect to take the lead. As the #1 sect in the eastern domain, High Heaven sect has shown enough prestige, so when it comes to the critical moment, High Heaven sect must stand at the forefront on behalf of the eastern domain. After becoming the pavilion master of Royal Sky Pavilion, Zhong Qiushui's character had changed a lot, becoming much calmer. If it was in the past, Zhong Qiushui wouldn't have said such cowardly words, but now it was natural. As long as he could preserve the strength of Royal Sky Pavilion as much as possible, what couldn't Zhong Qiushui do? After a few days, the entire southern barbaric land was bustling with noise and excitement. Many eastern region martial artists came to watch when they heard about the birth of a blessed place. Perhaps some people had the thought of getting a piece of the pie. Although many people knew that they didn't even have the qualification to drink soup in front of the top sects, they still came. After all, the birth of a blessed paradise was not common. It should be said that it had not been common in recent years. When these ancient sects first came to the Daluotian continent, there were still many blessed paradises. Some big sects even established their sects around those blessed paradises. However, after so many years had passed, the blessed lands that should have been excavated had already been excavated. It was rare to hear news of the blessed lands appearing in the world. This was something that would only happen once in 1,000 years. Most of the people in the Jianghu did not want to give up on it. While waiting for High Heaven sect to come, in addition to arranging his stronghold in the southern barbaric land and paying attention to the concealment, Chu Xiu also contacted Tianhun once. Tianhun told Chu Xiu not to follow the old path of Dugu Weiwei, but this old path only referred to learning and imitating Dugu Weiwei's martial Dao route. As for some experience in martial Dao cultivation and other aspects, it didn't matter. Even the same martial skill, even if it was inherited from Dugu Weiwei, as long as Chu Xiu could infuse it into his own martial Dao, then his future path would be different from Dugu Weiwei's. Once again contacting Chu Xiu, Tianhun nodded in satisfaction and said, "Not bad, very good. Your strength is much stronger than last time." Chu Xiu said in surprise, "You're able to sense my specific strength through just a essence-soul connection?" Tianhun smiled and said, "You and I were originally one, so naturally, we can sense each other. However, your memory has been erased so you can't sense me, but I can clearly sense you." What Tianhun said was very reasonable, but Chu Xiu felt a little uncomfortable. He didn't want others to sense him, even if this person was once in existence of the same origin as him. "Well, time is pressing. Let's not talk nonsense. You asked me to come, is there a problem?" Chu Xiu said, "It's not a problem of cultivation, but a problem about the blessed grotto heaven, which is the natural mystic realm in the lower realm. In the southern barbarian land under my jurisdiction, a new unexploited blessed grotto heaven has appeared. It should attract many big sects to compete for it. However, that place is in the southern barbarian land. No matter who gets that place in the end, they will definitely occupy it. I'm worried that my stronghold in the southern barbarian land will be discovered. Is there a way to destroy it with my strength?" This matter was what Chu Xiu had been thinking about during this time, but he didn't come up with a result. In the end, he had to ask Tianhun for help. In fact, it was a good thing to have a blessed grotto heaven appear. Even if it appeared next to the Tsangnan mansion, Chu Xiu didn't care. At worst, he could just give up the prefectural guard mansion. But the southern barbarian land was related to the passage to the lower realm. Chu Xiu couldn't just give it up. Tianhun raised his eyebrows and said, "You want to destroy a blessed grotto heaven? This thing can be said to be difficult, but it can also be said to be simple. Whether it is the so-called blessed grotto heaven or the mystic realm, they are actually small spaces parasitic on a complete world. Although they have rich qi of heaven and earth and can produce all kinds of strange phenomena, it also proves that they are incomplete and fragile. As long as you have enough strength, you can completely destroy them by force. Of course, your current strength is still a little weak, so you can only use another way, that is to find the core of the mystic realm. Core? Tianhun nodded and said. In fact, every mystic realm will have a core. The core is the strongest point in the mystic realm, and also the existence that supports the entire mystic realm. As long as you can destroy it or find a way to bring it out, the mystic realm will naturally be destroyed. Do you see the pillar tied to me behind me? That is the core of this spiritual cloud realm, but its original body was just an ordinary iron pillar. Later, many Daoyuotian masters joined forces to refine it into this shape. If you are lucky, the core of the mystic realm can be easily destroyed or taken away. If it is like this thing behind me, which is strong enough to support a small world, then you can only blame your bad luck. Although Tianhun pointed out a path for Chu Xiu, this path still depended on luck. Chu Xiu now felt that the feng shui of the southern barbarian land seemed to be a little bad. There were always some big and small things happening here. No wonder the Imperial Sky Pavilion was unwilling to develop here before. A few days later, High Heaven Sect came again, and it was not Feng Yinglong who came alone. Instead, he brought a large number of High Heaven Sect elites and Linghu Immortal Mountain. The entire High Heaven Sect was left with only Qin Baiyuan. Similarly, in the Imperial Sky Pavilion, Lu Sanjin also came with a group of Imperial Sky Pavilion elites, but compared to High Heaven Sect, they looked a little shabby. After High Heaven Sect arrived, they directly sealed off the Heavenly Cave Blessed Land and began to crack the Natural Spirit Array. Although this overbearing action made some Eastern Territory cultivators a little unhappy, High Heaven Sect had dominated the Eastern Territory for so many years. Even if they were unhappy, what could they do? They could only obediently step aside. At this moment, a playful voice suddenly sounded. The southern barbarian land does not belong to your Eastern Territory. Does your High Heaven Sect really think that it is not the Eastern Territory, but the Daoyuotian? Chapter 12-14. Whether it was the people from High Heaven Sect or Imperial Sky Pavilion, they weren't too surprised by this sudden voice. With such a thing happening, it would be strange if the people from the Southern Territory didn't come to intervene. As this voice fell, hundreds of cultivators emerged from the depths of the jungle of the southern barbaric land. There were both strong and weak cultivators. The one who spoke was wearing a pitch-black battle armor. The battle armor didn't seem to be made of gold or iron, but more like some kind of strange bone. It was strangely shaped and had barbs on it, making it look very hideous. However, the owner of this battle armor turned out to be a handsome young man, but the strange thing was that one of his eyes was blood red, while the other had a strange blue color. Chu Xiu asked Lu Sanjin via voice transmission, "Who is this?" Lu Sanjin knew that Chu Xiu cultivated all year round, and didn't know much about some of the Daoyuotian powerhouses, so he also introduced in a low voice, "The Palace Master of the Blissful Demon Palace, Blissful Demon Venerable, Yan Beifeng, a powerhouse at the 4th Heavenly Layer Martial Immortal Realm. However, this guy's brain isn't normal, so he's also called Yan Beifeng. He goes crazy at least 3 times a year. Although the majority of the people in the Blissful Demon Palace have abnormal brains, it's really rare to see someone as abnormal as him." Before Chu Xiu could speak, Lu Jianghe on the side curled his lips disdainfully and said, "A palace master is just a demon venerable." Chu Xiu glared at Lu Jianghe and told him to shut up. He found that ever since Lu Jianghe stepped into the heaven and earth profound understanding realm, he had become arrogant and always considered himself to be the Blood Sea Demon Venerable. Previously, he called himself the Blood Sea Demon Venerable, but he didn't have much confidence. Now he was very confident. However, this Demon Venerable was different from the Demon Venerable that Lu Jianghe understood. Lu Sanjin pointed to the others and said, "The others are not easy to deal with either." The middle-aged man in a black robe with his arms behind his back is the Vice Palace Master of the Sky Demon Palace, Heaven-Covering Demon Hand, Yuan Kongcheng. He has just stepped into the Martial Immortal Realm, so his strength should be between the 2nd and 3rd Heavenly Layer. The sloppy old man is the Sect Master of the Great Thousand Sect, Laws of Universe, Tao Qianming. He should be around the 3rd Heavenly Layer Martial Immortal Realm. There's also that dark-skinned man clad in armor. He's the Temple Master of War God Sect's War God Temple, Sikong Jialuo. This man is somewhat similar to your subordinate Kocha. He's a mixed blood between a barbarian and a human, but that was several generations ago. He only has a small part of the barbarian's blood flowing in his veins. The most terrifying one was the seemingly indifferent, ordinary-looking young man with a long sword on his back. He was one of the 3 great sword venerables of the world's sword sect, Sword Venerable Azure Don Mu Baishuang. He was a 7th heaven martial immortal. Once the sword lunatics go all out, it's not difficult for them to surpass themselves by 1 heavenly layer. After listening to Lu Sanjin's introduction, Chu Xiu suddenly had a feeling that the eastern region was the weakest in the entire Dayu Ocean. The western region was ruled by Buddhism. Just the Sanskrit sect alone was enough to take on the entire eastern region. Moreover, there was the heavenly Luo temple, which was even stronger than the Sanskrit. The northern region was ruled by Taoism. Not to mention other Taoist sects, the 3 Pristines temple was the leader of Taoism. Just their strength alone could suppress 2 Buddhist sections. As for the southern region, it was actually the weakest when they first came to the Dayu Ocean. Most of the sects that were not that strong were gathered in the southern region. Moreover, among the Dayu Ocean people at that time, the southern region was the place with the most barbarians and fierce beast forests, so it was the most difficult to develop. Everyone looked down on it, so it was left to the second-rate sects. In the end, who would have thought that after 10,000 years, the sects of the southern region would not only gain a firm foothold in the southern region after 10,000 years of fighting, but also refine many top sections. The War Martial God sect, for example, could not compare with a top sect like High Heaven sect in ancient times. They did not even have a single martial immortal, but now they had become a top Dayu Ocean force. The entire southern territory was actually very chaotic. The major forces were constantly attacking each other, but once there was a conflict with other territories, they would still unite against the common enemy. In this regard, the southern territory was stronger than the eastern territory. Facing the opening of the blessed heavenly abode, the entire southern region had sent 5 martial immortals. If it weren't for Fang Yinglong, the number 1 expert in the 8th layer of heaven, supporting the eastern region, they would truly be no match for them. Fang Yinglong snorted coldly and said, "If you want a piece of the pie, just say it. Don't talk so much nonsense. Yan Beifeng, if your southern territory wants to intervene in this matter, you should at least put in some effort to break the array, right?" Perhaps it was because Yan Beifeng stepped into the real pellet state very early, or he had cultivated some secret technique, so his current appearance was still young and handsome. Hearing Fang Yinglong's words, a bright smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, giving people a very sunny feeling. Break the array. However, I'd like to ask, which one of you here is the Imperial Sky Pavilion's Chu Xiu? Hearing Yan Beifeng ask about Chu Xiu, Fang Yinglong was taken aback. How did Chu Xiu get involved with the Southern Territory? He did not answer, but subconsciously looked at Chu Xiu. With this glance, Yan Beifeng had already guessed Chu Xiu's identity. He looked at Chu Xiu and said with a smile, "You are Chu Xiu?" Chu Xiu glanced at Ming Xuanyu, who was standing behind Yan Beifeng, and said indifferently, "Palace Master Yan, are you looking for revenge because of what happened last time? Is the demonic sect of the Southern Territory so narrow-minded?" Yan Beifeng glanced at Ming Xuanyu, who was standing behind him, and shook his head, saying, "Revenge for this guy? I'm not that bored. This is the karma and hatred that I sowed. If I can't even settle these myself, what use do I have for him?" Ming Xuanyu was a palace master of the blissful demon palace after all, and he was the strongest existence below the martial immortal realm in the blissful demon palace. However, Yan Beifeng did not give him any face at all. However, Yan Beifeng's tone changed and he said, "But you are right about one thing. I am indeed not a very broad-minded person. Who said that the leader of a sect must have the bearing of an expert in order to be an expert? I am a very narrow-minded person. Whoever makes me unhappy, I will make them die a horrible death." At this point, Yan Beifeng's handsome face became a little twisted, and his demonic aura even caused the void around him to tremble. Staring at Chu Xiu, Yan Beifeng said coldly, "You should know who Qinqing Di is, right? You once asked him to deal with Ming Xuanyu. However, it was that guy who destroyed 3 of the blissful demon palace's branches in succession. This made me very embarrassed and very unhappy. However, that guy is very cunning, and I can't find him. So this time, I will vent my anger on you. As Yan Beifeng's voice fell, the rules of heaven and earth in the surroundings seemed to be affected, and began to tremble, but there was no change at all. However, in the next moment, countless giant white bone hands carved with demonic runes suddenly appeared under Chu Xiu's feet. The demonic runes suppressed Chu Xiu's power, and the giant white bone hands directly grabbed towards him. At this instant, Chu Xiu wanted to curse. This was simply an undeserved calamity. If Yan Beifeng had come to find trouble with him because of Ming Xuanyu, he could still understand. However, who would have thought that Yan Beifeng would actually come to find trouble with him because of Chen Qingdi? When Chen Qingdi left, he clearly said that he was going to take a stroll around the eastern region, but who would have thought that he would go to the southern region, and even destroy 3 of the blissful demon palace's branches? Chu Xiu dared to guarantee that those 3 branches must have offended Chen Qingdi and angered him, which was why Chen Qingdi attacked them out of anger. Chu Xiu understood Chen Qingdi very well. Although he was domineering, he was not completely unreasonable. On the other hand, the blissful demon palace did not have a good reputation in the Daluotian world. Right now, Chu Xiu did not have the time to complain about this undeserved calamity. He had just released his domain to block those giant white bone hands, but he saw a royal heavenly treasure seal suddenly fall, and directly smash the giant white bone hands into pieces. Zhong Qiushui said coldly, "Yan Beifeng, you dare to touch someone from the Imperial Sky Pavilion in our territory. Are you seeking death?" Zhong Qiushui did not really like Chu Xiu, thinking that Chu Xiu was too scheming. However, Chu Xiu was now a member of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Yan Beifeng dared to touch his people in front of him. This was simply a slap to the Imperial Sky Pavilion's face. Fang Yinglong also sneered and said, "Why? Is the southern region prepared to fight with the eastern region now?" On the southern region's side, Tao Qianming of the Great Thousand Sect coughed and said with some dissatisfaction, "Yan Beifeng, why are you acting so crazy at this time?" Yuan Kongqing of the Sky Devil Palace and Sikong Jialua of the Battle Immortal Sect also looked at Yan Beifeng with dissatisfaction. Right now they had not even seen the item. Of course, it was not worth it to start a fight with the eastern region here for no reason. Yan Beifeng was only crazy, not stupid. Seeing that everyone was against him, no matter how crazy he was, he began to restrain himself. He did not look at Chu Xiu again, as if the previous incident had not happened at all. Zhong Qiushui looked at Chu Xiu helplessly and said, "I say, can you stop stirring up trouble? If you continue to provoke these powerhouses, the Imperial Sky Pavilion won't be able to support a great Buddha like you anymore. This isn't you, Chu Xiu, working as a revered elder for the Imperial Sky Pavilion. It's clear that the Imperial Sky Pavilion is working as a revered elder for you." Chu Xiu spread his hands and said innocently, "This really has nothing to do with me. It was clearly the other party who attacked first. Moreover, when we enter the Blessed Enclave later, there will definitely be a fight. At that time, we will still fall out with each other. The only difference is sooner or later." Zhong Qiushui knew that he could not win against Chu Xiu in an argument, so he did not continue to talk nonsense with Chu Xiu. Instead, he directly commanded the Imperial Sky Pavilion's warriors to participate in breaking the formation. There were also some people from the southern region. The eastern region and the southern region joined forces. In the end, it took them close to a day to finally break the Blessed Enclave in front of them. In an instant, the huge burial mound actually began to emit a terrifying blood-red light. This caused the experts present to look somewhat unpleasant. It seemed like this natural paradise wasn't that safe after all. Chapter 12:15. To most of the Daluotian blessed grotto heavens and lands, it was a treasured land filled with spiritual qi of heaven and earth. In reality, this place was the same. As soon as the group entered, they immediately felt an incredibly dense spiritual qi of heaven and earth rushing toward them. However, this space was actually blood-colored. There was no sun in the sky, only a hazy blood-red color. Moreover, Although the surrounding spiritual qi of heaven and earth was dense to the point that it had turned into mist, there was also a hint of blood red in it. That power also faintly carried violent blood qi, making people feel slightly uncomfortable. The people present frowned. After exchanging glances, they spread out in all directions at the same time to search. Right now they had yet to see the real benefits. It was not worth it to fight and kill at this time. Chu Xiu only brought Lu Jianghe with him. It was not because Lu Jianghe was powerful, but because he was the only one who had shown himself in front of Zhong Qiushui. Chu Xiu did not want to let even the Imperial Sky Pavilion see him. Lu Jianghe sniffled and said, "This is strange. There must have been people who died in this place. That's why this level of blood qi was condensed. It has even merged with the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. However, if there were many deaths, then this level of blood qi should have started to mutate long ago. It would be enough to turn a blessed grotto heavens and lands of heaven and earth into a land of extreme danger. However, it's just that the blood qi here is slightly denser. It hasn't developed in the direction of those evil places yet. Could it be that there were fewer people who died? Then how powerful must the expert be to be able to affect such a huge blessed grotto heavens after his death?" Chu Xiu glanced at him and said, "Are you sure you didn't sense wrongly?" Lu Jianghe snorted softly and said, "You can doubt my abilities, but you can't doubt my sensitivity toward the power of qi in blood. Right now, not only can I sense the amount of blood qi here, but I can also sense where the blood qi is the densest." As he spoke, Lu Jianghe pointed in a direction. However, it was shrouded in a thick blood mist, making it impossible to see the specific location. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. In any case, he wasn't here to look for treasures. He was only here to destroy this blessed enclave. He couldn't find a target for the time being, so he could only follow Lu Jianghe's instincts. Along the way, Chu Xiu was surprised to find that there were many mountains in this place, and their shapes gave Chu Xiu an extremely familiar feeling, but he couldn't tell what they looked like. By the time Chu Xiu and Lu Jianghe arrived, there were already dozens of martial artists fighting over it. Among them, there were several heaven and earth mysterious realm powerhouses, and the rest were almost all true fire spirit refinement realm. However, these people were all from the Southern Territory, and there was only one elder from High Heaven Sect whom Chu Xiu had met during the High Heaven Sect martial show, but he did not know his name. The thing they were fighting over was quite interesting. It was a fiery red stone pillar several tens of meters high. However, in Chu Xiu's eyes, the shape of this thing was a bit dirty and indescribable. Although that thing looked filthy, it contained an astonishing amount of pure yang energy. It was incomparably hot, so much so that even the surrounding heaven-earth yuan qi was purified by the baleful blood qi, and turned into incomparably pure yang energy. This thing could be used for artifact forging, or to construct spirit arrays with pure yang qi. It could be said to be twice the result with half the effort, and could be regarded as a precious treasure. When the others saw Chu Xiu coming, they all showed a hint of vigilance in their eyes. If it was just their own people, they might still have thoughts of infighting. However, if it developed into a war between two domains, they would be in danger of fighting against outsiders and settling down internally. The Southern Territory and the Northern Territory were not completely cut off from each other, but the cultivators from the Southern Territory really didn't know who Chu Xiu was. After all, it hadn't been long since Chu Xiu became famous in the Eastern Territory, and the Daoyuotian Empire was so large. So news spread a little slowly. "Xia Xikong, is this guy from your High Heaven sect?" A tall, burly man from War God sect asked. Xia Xikong of High Heaven sect coldly snorted and said, "That's the Royal Heaven Pavilion's Kangwu County's county governor, Chu Xiu, Guzun's successor." Although High Heaven sect generally didn't have a good impression of Chu Xiu, he was surrounded by a group of cultivators from the Southern Territory at this time. When Chu Xiu suddenly appeared, he actually felt relieved. Although the cultivators from the Southern Territory didn't know Chu Xiu, they had vaguely heard of Chu Xiu's name. Hearing this, the burly man from War God sect laughed strangely and said, "Oh, it's that Chu Xiu who defeated your High Heaven sect's Xianyuan Wushuang. That boy has a temper that needs to be taught a lesson, and now he's finally been taught a lesson?" Xianyuan Wushuang's reputation in the Daoyuotian Empire was not small. Of course, part of this reputation was due to his strength, And part of it was due to his strange personality. Xia Xikong's face suddenly darkened when he heard this. The leader of their high heaven sect's younger generation had been defeated. This was not something worth mentioning. But before Xia Xikong could speak, the burly man from War God sect said to Chu Xiu, "Boy from the Royal Heaven Pavilion, I advise you to be sensible. This blessed abode is so big, and there are many opportunities. If you retreat now, we won't bother to target you. There's a limit to how long the blessed abode can stay open. You won't even have the chance to enter once the southern territory occupies it." Chu Xiu had just sized up the thing. Although it contained extremely pure yang energy, it was not what he wanted. Tian Hun had once given Chu Xiu a detailed description of the blessed enclave. The true core was definitely not the thing in front of him. Chu Xiu didn't come here to snatch treasures, so he originally planned to leave just like that. However, when he heard the words of the strong man from the martial god sect, he immediately stopped and sneered, "What if I don't leave?" The burly man from the battle god sect sneered as well. Just as he was about to speak up, a few powerful demonic auras appeared and shot towards Chu Xiu and the others. Ming Xuanyu of the Blissful Demon Palace, together with two profound illumination realm cultivators, directly surrounded Chu Xiu and said coldly, "Chu Xiu, just now you had Qiu Shui protecting you. Who else can help you now? Speak. Who the hell is Chen Qingdi, and where is he?" Judging from the performance of Yan Beifeng and Ming Xuanyu, they were almost driven mad by Chen Qingdi. In fact, this was indeed the case. With Chen Qingdi's current combat power, he was almost invincible under the martial immortal realm. Unless Yan Beifeng personally appeared, no one could defeat him. However, the problem was that Chen Qingdi wasn't an idiot. If Yan Beifeng appeared, he would be long gone. This was a thorny problem for the Blissful Demon Palace. Moreover, they had specially investigated Chen Qingdi, but the results showed that he had simply popped out from a crack in a rock. They had no clue about him at all. The only clue they had was that they were helpers Chu Xiu had found. Thus, in this blessed enclave, everyone else was here to fight over the treasures in the blessed enclave. Only the Blissful Demon Palace was here to interrogate Chen Qingdi for information. Seeing the people from the Blissful Demon Palace glaring at him, Chu Xiu felt a headache coming on. Although he knew that Emperor Chen Qingdi wouldn't do anything to harm him by luring him into the exalted celestial plane, he knew that Emperor Chen Qingdi wasn't someone to be trifled with. When he was in the lower realm, Chen Qingdi's name spread far and wide. No idiot would dare to provoke him. However, after he arrived in the Daluocean, given Chen Qingdi's personality, if someone provoked him or if he didn't like the look of things, he would immediately throw a punch at them, no matter who they were. It was Chu Xiu who had brought Chen Qingdi to the Daluocean to help him solve his predicament. Now that something had happened, Chu Xiu naturally had to bear the consequences. He didn't hold any grudges. Chu Xiu sighed as he looked at Ming Xuanyu. Just when Ming Xuanyu thought that Chu Xiu was going to say something, Chu Xiu gripped the formation-breaking saber in his hand. The saber radiance slashed at Ming Xuanyu with an earth-shattering momentum. Damn it! Ming Xuanyu didn't expect that Chu Xiu would attack him without saying a word. In a hurry, Ming Xuanyu's body was surrounded by black fog. A burst of ghostly wails and howls rang out. Countless evil ghosts emerged from the black fog and blocked Chu Xiu's saber. But the next moment, Chu Xiu's domain spread out and instantly strangled all the ghosts in the black fog. When Ming Xuanyu helped Xian Jialua to deal with Chu Xiu, he had fought with Chu Xiu and knew how terrifying Chu Xiu's strength was. But the problem was, how long had it been? Why did he feel that Chu Xiu's strength had skyrocketed again? What he didn't know was that it was because he and Xian Jialua had joined forces last time to threaten Chu Xiu's stronghold in the southern land that Chu Xiu had a sense of urgency, so he began to desperately cultivate. On the other side, Lu Jianghe and the other two heaven and earth mysterious realm martial artists had also begun a fierce battle. Although Lu Jianghe had just stepped into the heaven and earth mysterious realm, he was not at the early stage of the heaven and earth mysterious realm. The power accumulated by him when he was in the true fire spiritual refinement realm was too strong, so after the breakthrough, he directly skipped the early stage. Moreover, with the mysterious and strange blood demon power, it was not a problem for him to fight against two people alone. On the other side, Chu Xiu began to directly suppress Ming Xuanyu. He opened his god domain and trapped Ming Xuanyu in it. Chu Xiu's ethereal slash, break formula saber intent, 7 limits earth destroyer. These extremely powerful saber techniques slashed down one after another. Every slash seemed to have the power to shatter mountains and split the earth. In terms of pure power, Ming Xuanyu was already somewhat unable to withstand it. The evil demonic saber in his hand, which could devour any power, could not devour this extremely sharp power at this time. He was slashed back again and again. Even his face was flushed and his aura was unstable. The burly man from the martial fighting immortal sect, who wanted to cause trouble for Chu Xiu, was now in a cold sweat. Ming Xuanyu was also a famous expert in the southern region. In any case, he was stronger than him. However, in front of Chu Xiu, he was suppressed to the point that he could not fight back. If it were him, he would probably be in a worse situation. Moreover, what made him even more afraid was Chu Xiu's attitude. Without saying anything, he attacked immediately. This kind of ruthless person was simply unreasonable. The degree of danger was beyond imagination. Chapter 12:16. Ming Xuanyu was very puzzled. How long had it been? How did Chu Xiu's strength increase so much? He was so strong that it was unreasonable. He had wanted to find Chu Xiu and force him to reveal Chen Qingdi's whereabouts so that he could claim credit in front of Yan Beifeng. However, he now realized to his dismay that he had been tricked. Ming Xuanyu glanced at the other cultivators of the southern territory and shouted angrily, "What are you all still looking at? As fellow cultivators of the southern territory, why aren't you attacking together?" The burly man from the war-battling divine sect and the other cultivators of the southern territory all sneered, and subconsciously took a few steps back. They were indeed hostile towards Chu Xiu before, but now it was the blissful demon palace who was settling a personal grudge with Chu Xiu. What did that have to do with them? They would not interfere in this matter out of boredom. The extremely sharp saber radiance engulfed Ming Xuanyu's entire body. Ming Xuanyu finally could not hold on any longer. He shouted, "Retreat." As soon as he said that, Ming Xuanyu's figure strangely turned into nothingness. It was not an illusion, nor was it a smokescreen. It was as if he had suddenly become a part of this space, causing all of Chu Xiu's saber radiance to miss. Chu Xiu formed a seal with his hand and unleashed the great compassion mantra. Heaven's cry blood rain fell from the sky and a huge demonic hand grabbed at Ming Xuanyu, who had turned into a shadow of nothingness. However, it still missed and allowed Ming Xuanyu to escape. Chu Xiu let out a soft cry of surprise. Ming Xuanyu's move was truly beyond his imagination. Although the blissful demon palace was also a demonic cultivator, they did not follow the orthodox path of demonic cultivation. Instead, they were evil and strange. They were good at researching all kinds of strange things. Although most of their research was bound to fail, they had managed to research quite a few evil things over the years. None of them were weak. Right now, Chu Xiu could not see any flaws in Ming Xuanyu's move. Even the power of the great compassion mantra could not imprison him. Chu Xiu's side had not succeeded, but Lu Jiang he had killed a heaven and earth profound illumination cultivator from the blissful demon palace. This surprised Chu Xiu. In fact, with Lu Jianghe's strength, it was not strange for him to kill a cultivator of the same level. Although he had always claimed that he was the 5th devil lord of the Kunlun demon sect, with his strength, if he had stepped into the heaven and earth mystic opening 500 years ago when the Kunlun demon sect was still around, he might have really become the 5th devil lord. But Lu Jiang he had been able to kill one of them even when he was fighting too. Chu Xiu had underestimated him. Seeing that Ming Xuanyu and the other cultivators from the blissful demon palace had escaped, Chu Xiu said coldly, "After them." Lu Jiang he looked at the thing hesitantly. Although this thing looks a little weird, it is still a treasure. Are we not going to snatch it? Chu Xiu shook his head. Which one of us cultivates pure yang astral energy? There is not much use in snatching it. Let's not waste time on this kind of useless thing. Let's get rid of the people from the blissful demon palace first. Even without the incident with Chen Qingdi, Ming Xuanyu had teamed up with Sanskrit's Xian Jialua to attack his stronghold in the southern barbarian land. He had not forgotten this grudge. Now that Ming Xuanyu had fallen out with the blissful demon palace, if he did not kill him now, when would he? If it was anyone else, they might have said that they would definitely teach them a lesson next time. However, Chu Xiu was more used to sending them on their way this time. Seeing that Chu Xiu and Lu Jiang, he were chasing after the people from the blissful demon palace, the cultivators from the southern territory heaved a sigh of relief. Chu Xiu had given them a lot of pressure. Now that he had given up on the fight, they had one less formidable opponent. Ming Xuanyu was frantically running for his life. He was not in a good state at the moment. He had overexerted the power of his essence soul. The secret technique he had used just now was to use the power of his essence soul to drag his body into the void. As long as the opponent's power could not tear through the void, they would not be able to hurt him. However, he was not a cultivator who mainly cultivated the power of his essence soul. In the short span of a few breaths, he had consumed a large amount of the power of his essence soul. Furthermore, he could feel that Chu Xiu was still chasing after him. This made Ming Xuanyu want to curse. He had already escaped, so why was the other party chasing after him instead of fighting for the treasure? After all, it was Chen Qingdi who had turned the blissful demon palace upside down. It was the blissful demon palace who had a grudge against Chu Xiu and Chen Qingdi. Why did it seem like Chu Xiu had a deep grudge against him? A faint bloodlust aura came from behind Ming Xuanyu. Chu Xiu and Lu Jiang he had actually used the blood escape secret technique at the same time. Their speed had greatly increased as they chased after him. Of course, they did not use their own qi and blood. Instead, they used the qi and blood of the blissful demon palace cultivator that Lu Jiang he had killed. Seeing that they were about to catch up, Ming Xuanyu's eyes flashed with a cold light. He was merely unwilling to fight Chu Xiu with his life on the line. Did Chu Xiu really think that he did not dare to fight him with his life on the line? Ming Xuanyu abruptly turned around. Boundless demonic aura swirled around him. The demonic fog spread out for several hundred feet. Countless evil ghosts howled and gathered together, transforming into a malevolent-looking demon god with a triangular head. Just as Chu Xiu was about to attack, a disdainful voice suddenly rang out. Trash. To deal with a martial artist with a lower realm than you. You even used the blood-devouring devil god. Have you been catching those barbarians in the southern barbaric land too easily all these years that you slacked off your cultivation? The dense mist of blood in the surroundings instantly dissipated. In its place was a sinister demonic aura. Yan Beifeng descended from the sky. In that instant, Ming Xuanyu, who had been scolded, heaved a sigh of relief. On the other hand, Chu Xiu frowned. An expert of the martial immortal realm had arrived. What Chu Xiu was thinking about now was not how to kill, but how to escape. However, although Chu Xiu looked grave on the surface, he was still very calm in his heart. Although martial immortals were powerful, they were not so powerful that he would be instantly killed. Chu Xiu had seen Zhong Qiushui attack many times. He was still able to withstand one or two blows. If Lu Sanjin's information was correct, Yan Beifeng and Zhong Qiushui were both in the fourth heaven of the martial immortal realm. Chu Xiu still had a chance. Especially when the opponent was a demonic cultivator. Chu Xiu had the Buddhist divine power, the cross-shaped lotus seal, which had a certain restraining effect on him. Yan Beifeng looked at Chu Xiu with a hint of interest in his eyes. Actually, compared to Chen Qingdi, I'm more interested in you. You seem to be surrounded by some very strange people. The entire eastern region knows that you're the successor of Gu Zun. Although you didn't say it, no one was able to deduce which successor you are from your cultivation method. That's already very strange. Also, that fellow by your side, Lu Fengxian, actually defeated Xianyuan Wushuang. Although he's called the successor of Marquis Lu Wenhou, the ancestor of my blissful demon palace had dealings with Marquis Lu Wenhou. According to his knowledge, Marquis Lu Wenhou shouldn't have any successor. Even if there was a successor who had entered the Daluotian realm. It's very strange that he hasn't shown himself for 10,000 years. Of course, there's also that Chen Qingdi. Although I wasn't able to catch him, I was able to see his martial path from the corpse of my blissful demon palace's disciple. His physical body is shockingly strong. Moreover, that kind of combat power is not something that can be cultivated through seclusion. It's definitely tempered through countless bloody battles. However, I've never heard of this person in the Daluotian realm. Don't you think it's strange? So many strange things are related to you. Therefore, I'm very attracted to you, Chu Xiao. Yan Beifeng had a faint smile on his face. He looked at Chu Xiao as if he was looking at a very interesting toy. In fact, there were many loopholes in Chu Xiao. If Yan Beifeng, a person from the eastern region, could see them, naturally, other people could as well. However, no one looked into it because there was no need. Chu Xiao could bring benefits and strength to the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Why would the Imperial Sky Pavilion look into it? As an enemy of Chu Xiao, for example, Cold River City, Yi Weikong didn't care whether Chu Xiao was the successor of Gu Zun or not. If he was in the way of the Cold River City, he could just kill him directly. Therefore, Yan Beifeng, who didn't have much connection with Chu Xiao, specially studied Chu Xiao out of pure curiosity. He didn't expect to find so many suspicious points. Chu Xiao said indifferently, "The warriors of the southern region all call you Crazy Yan. A crazy person always sees a normal person as abnormal. You should be the strangest one here." Yan Beifeng didn't show any anger on his face. He still had that playful smile on his face as he said, "I'm a very curious person. I want to get a result on everything. Of course, the method of getting a result isn't important to me. Therefore, I didn't expect you to answer me at all. After I capture you, I'll use the soul-searching secret technique of the blissful demon palace to reveal the deepest secrets in your heart to me." Chu Xiao narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "I'm afraid that the deepest secrets in my heart will scare you to death." "Is that so? I'm even more curious now." Following Yan Beifeng's words, the demonic aura behind him gradually changed. The cold demonic aura outlined a huge demonic palace. In every layer of demonic palace, there was a huge shadow. It was like a demon god, malevolent and eerie. Yan Beifeng's martial path was to construct tens of thousands of demonic palaces and nurture demon gods. As for the demon gods in the demon palace, their original forms were the warriors who had died in his hands. Seeing the aura that Yan Beifeng revealed, Chu Xiao instantly cursed Lu Sanjin in his heart. Lu Sanjin is unreliable. Fourth layer of martial immortal my *SS. Looking at the true aura that Yan Beifeng revealed, he was obviously stronger than Zhong Qiushui. He had already reached the fifth layer of martial immortal realm. Chu Xiao transmitted his voice to Lu Jianghe. "Later, I'll use the cross-shaped lotus seal to block Yan Beifeng's attack. You escape first, I'll catch up later." Hearing this, Lu Jianghe instantly revealed a touched expression. "That's great. I didn't waste my time working for you for such a long time." Even though Lu Jianghe said so, he was still retreating at an extremely fast speed. However, at this moment, another demonic aura that wasn't inferior to Yan Beifeng's suddenly descended. The Vice Palace Lord of the Sky Demon Palace, Yuan Kongqing, descended from midair and said calmly, "Yan Beifeng, what are you doing here?" Chapter 12:17. Both Yan Beifeng and Chu Xiao did not expect Yuan Kongqing of the Sky Devil Palace to suddenly intervene. Yan Beifeng looked coldly at Yuan Kongqing and frowned. "What do you mean? You want to protect this Chu Xiao? As far as I know, he has nothing to do with your heavenly demon palace, right?" Yuan Kongqing said indifferently, "He has nothing to do with us. But I just don't like you, Yan Beifeng, and the blissful demon palace. Is that not okay?" Yan Beifeng's eyes turned cold. Behind him, demon gods roared and their auras soared into the sky. Yuan Kongqing also snorted coldly. Behind him, pure demonic qi turned into a huge shadow of a demon god that was hundreds of zhang tall. It was comparable to Chu Xiao's lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Although its aura was slightly weaker than Yan Beifeng's, it was not inferior either. Seeing this, Chu Xiao was certain that Lu Sanjin was indeed unreliable. He had said that Yuan Kongqing had just become a martial immortal, and his strength was at most at the second or third heaven. But now, it seemed that Yuan Kongqing was at least a fourth heaven. However, Chu Xiao did not understand why Yuan Kongqing would stand out to help him. Ever since coming to the Daluotian, Chu Xiao had not come into contact with any disciple of the Heavenly Demon Palace. He had not even come into contact with anything related to the Heavenly Demon Palace. As for Yuan Kongqing's excuse that he did not like the blissful demon palace, Chu Xiu did not believe it. The strength of the Daluotian demonic path was not very strong, and they were not very united. At least, the blissful demon palace and the heavenly demon palace had never been on good terms. But even if they were not on good terms, they would not fight in the blessed enclave over such a ridiculous excuse. Yan Beifeng naturally did not fear Yuan Kongqing. Just as he was about to make a move, Ming Xuanyu pulled him back and whispered to him, advising him to look at the bigger picture. The fight for the blessed enclave had yet to come to an end. It was fine for them to make a move against Chu Xiu, but if they were to engage in a fierce battle with the heavenly demonic palace because of this, then it would not be worth it. Yan Beifeng snorted coldly. No one knew what he was thinking. After a while he waved his hand and left with Ming Xuanyu and the others. After the blissful devil palace's people left, Chu Xiu cupped his fists towards Yuan Kongqing. Many thanks for Palace Lord Yuan's help. A warm smile appeared on Yuan Kongqing's face. Chu, there's no need to be so polite. Those lunatics from the blissful devil palace only know how to do things that bring shame to our devil Dao. If I saw them, I would definitely help them if I could. Chu Xiu's expression didn't change, but he was sneering in his heart. We're both from the demonic path, so why are you pretending to be benevolent? Although the heavenly demonic palace's actions weren't as crazy as the blissful devil palace's, they weren't much better. At the very least, they wouldn't help him for no reason. Therefore, Chu Xiu smiled and said, I'll remember this favor and will definitely repay it in the future. However, the treasures in the blessed enclave are already being fought over, so I won't take up any more of Palace Lord Yuan's time. After exchanging some pleasantries, Chu Xiu was about to leave, which stunned Yuan Kongqing. This kid doesn't play by the rules. I did save you, but you're leaving just like that? This made Yuan Kongqing swallow the words he was about to say. Chu, wait, I still have something to ask you. Chu Xiu turned around and said with a faint smile, Palace Lord Yuan saved me just now. If you have anything to say, just say it. There's no need to beat around the bush. Yuan Kongqing narrowed his eyes and said, Alright, I won't beat around the bush then. I can see that your martial arts have traces of that person from 500 years ago. Hearing Yuan Kongqing's words, Chu Xiu was shocked, but his expression didn't change in the slightest. Instead, he put on a puzzled look and said, Palace Lord Yuan, I don't quite understand what you're saying. What 500 years ago? Yuan Kongqing smiled and said, Chu, there's no need to hide it. You're the successor of Gu Zun, and your ancestral master from 500 years ago must have participated in that battle. He might even have obtained the demon's blood essence and deduced some information about his martial arts from it. Am I right? In fact, there's nothing shameful about this, because my heavenly demonic palace is the same. At this point, Yuan Kongqing couldn't help but sigh. That person also cultivated the demonic path, but I never thought that the demonic path could be so powerful. I didn't see that battle with my own eyes, but from the few words left behind by my ancestral master, I can see that it was so powerful that it made people despair. In that battle, my heavenly demonic palace obtained a few drops of that person's blood essence and extracted a part of the martial arts from it. I think Chu Chu's ancestral master must have done the same. Things like martial arts, except for one's own inheritance, there's no need to hide the martial arts of others. So I want both sides to exchange the inheritance of that person. Hearing Yuan Kongqing's words, Chu Xiu finally understood what the other party meant. After seeing Heavenly Soul, he had become a little sensitive. 500 years was enough to erase many things. Except for cultivators like the old pavilion master who had participated in the battle with Dugu Weiwei, and was still incomparably afraid of him. In fact, other people's impression of Dugu Weiwei was very shallow, and they only knew about him from books. People of the demonic path like Yuan Kongqing paid more attention to Dugu Weiwei than cultivators of the righteous path, and obtained a lot of things from Dugu Weiwei's blood essence. So at this time, seeing that Chu Xiu had something related to Dugu Weiwei, coupled with the fact that Chu Xiu had made up the identity of a Gu Zun's descendant after fighting with Dugu Weiwei from the moment he appeared in the Daluotian, Yuan Kongqing naturally made up these things in his mind. Chu Xiu smiled and said, Exchanging martial arts with each other, Of course I'm willing to do this kind of thing. It's just that this secret art belongs to my lineage, so I'll have to wait until I go back and discuss it with my master and obtain his consent before making a decision. Yuan Kongqing nodded and said, "No problem, when the exploration of the blessed heavenly abode is over, I will come to visit you again, Chu." With that said, Chu Xiu cupped his fists and left with Lu Jianghe. After Chu Xiu's figure disappeared, several Sky Demon Palace cultivators walked over from a distance. One of them said doubtfully, "Palace Lord, the other party is only at the Heaven and Earth Profound Insight realm. Even if he has a Guzun behind him, we can still capture him here, and use a soul-searching secret technique to dig out everything in his head. Why bother with such a troublesome transaction?" Yuan Kongqing shook his head and said, "You people are too extreme in doing things. This is not good. Buddhism dominates the western region, and Tao reigns supreme in the northern region. Why can't our demonic path be number one in the entire southern region? It's not just because of the internal strife between Sky Demon Palace and Blissful Devil Palace, but also because we don't leave any leeway in doing things, making other sects and wandering cultivators unwilling to deal with us. Moreover, do you really think that Chu Xiu is a simple person? During the 2 to 3 years that he had been the Emperor Heaven Pavilion's foreign delegate, he had turned the entire eastern region upside down. In recent years, almost all the major events in the eastern region were related to him. A person like him was not simple. Moreover, when Yan Beifeng was about to attack him just now, did you see any panic or despair on his face? No, not even a trace. Even if he is facing a fifth heaven martial immortal, he clearly has a certain degree of confidence in escaping. So remember, before you have absolute confidence, don't always shout about fighting and killing. Do things more steadily." The disciple hurriedly said, "Yes, Palace Lord. I will remember." Yuan Kongqing said indifferently, "Also, I am only the Vice Palace Lord of Sky Demon Palace, not the Palace Lord. Don't call me by the wrong title, and let others use it against you. Keep your mouth shut. You must know that a loose tongue can cause trouble." On the other side of the blessed enclave, Lu Jianghe followed behind Chu Xiu and curled his lips. "I say, you're not really going to trade the inheritance left behind by the sect lord to him, are you? Although this guy is always smiling, he's not a good person." Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Of course I know he's not a good person. Is there anyone from the demonic path who's a good person? The inheritance is dead, but people are alive. I need to consider this matter carefully." Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Lu Jianghe didn't pursue the matter any further. Only Chu Xiu had the authority to decide matters concerning Dugu Weiwei in the entire Kunlun devil cult. After all, he was Dugu Weiwei's successor, the sect lord. With Yan Beifeng's matter, Chu Xiu also paid attention to it. He raised his spiritual sense to the maximum, keeping his guard up against the people from the blissful demon palace. He first had to find the core that supported the blessed enclave, and not compete with the people from the blissful demon palace. However, this blessed enclave was too big, so big that it exceeded Chu Xiu's imagination. He and Lu Jianghe increased their speed to the maximum. After searching for 2 hours, they still hadn't reached the end. They only found a small mountain that looked like a giant hand. The material was sturdy and could be used to set up a formation. Looking at the shape of the mountain, Chu Xiu suddenly thought of something. He murmured, "I think I know how this blessed enclave came about." Lu Jianghe said in surprise, "A blessed enclave is a blessed enclave. How else could it have come about?" Chu Xiu didn't care about Lu Jianghe. Instead, he led the people in the opposite direction. After traveling for close to 4 hours, they finally saw another palm-shaped mountain that looked almost the same. Chu Xiu let out a long breath and said, "This place isn't a blessed enclave at all. It's a place where an ancient demon god buried himself." Thinking that the entrance to the blessed enclave was actually a huge tomb, as well as the various strange phenomena in the blessed enclave, as well as the 2 giant palms and small mountains, Chu Xiu was sure that this was the place where an ancient demon god buried himself. It was a huge tomb that he had built for himself. Lu Jianghe wasn't an idiot. He understood immediately after hearing it. However, he had a strange expression soon after. If an ancient demon god was buried in the blessed enclave, Then the indescribable thing that the people from the martial god sect fought over was the ancient demon gods thing? He wondered how those people would feel if they knew the truth. Chapter 12:18. No one had ever seen an ancient demon god alive. Of course, no one had ever seen a dead one either. The body of the demon god in the tomb had long become one with the blessed enclave, through the passage of time. It had become a mountain of gold and iron. The thing that supported the blessed enclave must be the most important thing in the demon god's body. It was either the head or the heart. After knowing the location of the demon god's hands, Chu Xiu could more or less guess where the head and heart were. He did not stop and immediately brought Lu Jianghe over. Chu Xiu and Lu Jianghe deduced the location of the demon god's head and heart. What they did not know was that with the speed and spiritual sense of a martial immortal, someone had already found the location. It was a small hill that was shaped like a huge head. However, it had 3 eyes. 2 of the normal eyes had been eroded into 2 large holes. However, the vertical eye in the middle was like a gem. It gave off a blinding light, and one could tell it was not an ordinary object. There were 2 people standing in front of the vertical eye. One of them was a sloppy old man. He was the sect leader of the sect of Kiliakosm, Tao Qianming. The other person had a long sword on his back, and an indifferent expression. He was one of the 3 great sword honorables of the World Sword Sect, Honorable Swordsman Qing Li Mu Baishuang. The 2 of them stood in front of the vertical eye. However, neither of them made a move. Tao Qianming did not show any hostility. This was because Tao Qianming knew that the difference between him and Mu Baishuang was too great. One was at the 4th heaven while the other was at the 7th heaven. Moreover, the crazy swordsman of the World Sword Sect had shocking battle strength. He was famous for being strong among his peers. The sect of Kiliakosm had many secret skills. He was known as the sect of Kiliakosm. Although he did not have 10,000 secret skills, he had quite a lot. However, a secret technique was a secret technique. There were only a few moves that were really useful. It was not always better to have more moves. Chen Qingdi only relied on his pair of iron fists to conquer the world, and it was still difficult for him to meet an opponent of the same level. The great Kiliakosm sect's special skills were formations, equipment forging, elixir concocting, and even research on all kinds of strange things. In terms of battle prowess, they were not stronger than warriors at the same level. Tao Qianming cupped his hands towards Mu Baishuang and said, "Sword Venerable Qingli, this object was formed from an ancient demonic god's vertical eye. It's where its power converges, so it must be extremely precious. How about this? The Kiliakosm sect is willing to forge 3 supreme-grade divine weapons for the sword sects under the heavens. We will provide the materials ourselves and request that the sword sects under the heavens provide them. I wonder if revered swordsman Qingli is willing to let me have it." Even though this item was a treasure, almost all of the warriors in the world's sword sect relied on a single sword to conquer the world. To them, this item wasn't too useful. On the other hand, 3 supreme-grade divine swords were real. He was bleeding a lot, so he believed that Mu Baishuang would agree. However, Mu Baishuang didn't answer Tao Qianming. He only said indifferently, "Sect leader Tao, have you seen the current strength of the East region?" Tao Qianming was stunned. Why did he bring up the East region again? He nodded subconsciously and said, "I have. What's wrong?" Mu Baishuang said in a deep voice, "Back when I came to the Daluotian continent, the southern region was the weakest among the 4 regions. Now in the southern region the Sword Sect, the Devil Path, the Battle God Sect, the Body Cultivators, and the Sect of Miscellany represented by the Great Kiliakosm Sect. None of them are weak. On the other hand, the East region is filled with endless internal strife, and the rise of Cold River City. The division of the 4 regions was established 10,000 years ago. Now that it's been 10,000 years, shouldn't the rules be changed?" Tao Qianming was shocked when he heard this. The guys from the sword sect of the world were not just cultivators who specialized in sword Dao. On the contrary, they were crazy and radical. It was said that before the great ancient calamity, the guys from the sword sect of the world had cold-bloodedly killed their own disciples, and only left the elites to enter the Daluotian continent. Although this behavior was rational, it was also rational and cold-blooded. Over the years, the sword sect of the world had vaguely become the #1 sect in the southern region. They had relied on the long swords in their hands to fight for their power. However, the Great Kiliakosm sect had actually risen after they came to the Daluotian continent. It was not an ancient sect. Therefore, Tao Qianming didn't know much about the division of interests from 10,000 years ago. He just asked cautiously, "What does sword Venerable Qingli mean?" Mu Baishuang's face was still expressionless, but his voice had a trace of unmeltable coldness. "I mean, with this demon god's vertical eye as a guide, take advantage of this opportunity to severely injure, or even kill, the #1 person in the eastern region, High Heaven Sect's Fang Yinglong." Tao Qianming was shocked by Mu Baishuang's words. He couldn't help but whisper, "What do you want to do? Provoke a conflict between the two regions? That's Fang Yinglong, the sect master of High Heaven Sect." Although they were enemies right now, seizing treasures was seizing treasures, and killing people was killing people. These were two different concepts. Mu Baishuang remained expressionless as he said, "A conflict between the two regions." No, it's only a conflict when both sides are evenly matched. Now that the Southern Territory is stronger than the Eastern Territory, it should be a matter of plunder. Also, Sect Master Tao, don't forget that the Daluotian Divine Palace is about to open. That is truly related to the future of our great sections. The Exalted Divine Palace could only accommodate so many people. In the beginning, the Exalted Divine Palace had to draw lots in order to enter. Later on, they had to compete in the arena, but the last few times, it had become a complete melee. Although this melee is controlled within a certain range, no one knows how long this fragile order can be maintained. Killing now is killing in the future is still killing. Why can't we weaken the Eastern Territory now? It's been 10,000 years. The Daluotian has been peaceful for too long. It's not that my sword sect wants to set off a storm, but that the entire Daluotian, the 4 regions of the East, West, South and North, have long been shrouded in endless storms. Hearing Mu Baishuang say this, Tao Qianming couldn't help twisting his body uncomfortably. He was also a martial immortal and the sect master of a top sect, so he could naturally feel this. 10,000 years was too long. It was already not easy for the order established 10,000 years ago to persist until now. In fact, 10,000 years ago, when everyone first came to the Daluotian, they were all scattered across the 4 regions, each dealing with their own affairs. They were so busy with their own affairs that they couldn't deal with, so how could they have the time to care about others? Therefore, at that time, there was very little communication between the great Daluotian sections. But now, although there were very few people who led a sect to traverse the 4 regions, there were many martial artists who traveled the entire Daluotian to train. There were also forces like the Kiliakosm sect and Cold River City rising up. The order of the entire Daluotian was actually different from 10,000 years ago. But Tao Qianming didn't expect that this would actually happen to him. After thinking for a while, Tao Qianming sighed and said, "What does Honorable Swordsman Qingli plan to do?" He was from the Southern Territory. This was a conflict between the 4 regions. If he didn't stand on the Southern Territory's side, where would he stand? Mu Baishuang said indifferently, "It's very simple. There's no need to scheme, and I'm not good at that. When someone comes, I'll kill them with a sword. Sect Master Tao, you'll just be in charge of killing them for me." Tao Qianming grinned. Simple and violent indeed, that was the style of the sword sect. But what Tao Qianming didn't expect was that Mu Baishuang was even more simple and violent than he had imagined. He originally wanted to lie in ambush with Mu Baishuang and prepare to launch a sneak attack. But in the end, Mu Baishuang just stood there openly and didn't try to snatch the vertical eye. It was as if he was just waiting for Fang Yinglong to come. As a swordsman, Mu Baishuang's ambition was to obtain benefits directly, and not to obtain them indirectly. Of course, this required great strength. Otherwise, there would be no way to explain yourself if you were tricked to death. When Fang Yinglong arrived here, he saw this strange scene. The vertical eye that didn't look ordinary was floating in mid-air, while Mu Baishuang and Tao Qianming stood at the side. They didn't try to snatch it, and it was as if they were waiting for something. Fang Yinglong said in surprise, "What kind of powerful protective formation is this place?" Mu Baishuang looked at Fang Yinglong and said indifferently, Sect Master Fang, do you want this thing? Of course I do. Fang Yinglong answered subconsciously. Mu Baishuang nodded and said, very good, I want this thing too. As Mu Baishuang's voice fell, he unsheathed a long sword that was glowing with green light. Instantly, the sound of the sword resonated through the world. The green sword light distorted the world, and the laws of creation seemed to lose their effect under the sword light. There was only one type of power that could exist here: Sword Qi. Green Dawn Sword Realm. Fang Yinglong was shocked. This thing looked like a domain, but it wasn't. It was one of Mu Baishuang's famous techniques. But he was using it right from the start. What was he trying to do? Fang Yinglong didn't have time to think. The 9 dragons around him roared, trying to push open the Green Dawn Sword Realm. At this moment, Tao Qianming formed a seal with both hands and set up an array in the air. A blinding golden array light blocked Fang Yinglong's connection with the world. From the movements of the two of them, Fang Yinglong could feel that they were actually trying to kill him. Mu Baishuang, are you people from the southern region crazy? You're trying to steal my treasure? Are you serious? Mu Baishuang didn't speak, but the Green Dawn Sword Realm opened up a world. Countless sword lights fell from the sky, strangling the coiling dragons around Fang Yinglong. Although Fang Yinglong didn't know why the two of them were trying to kill him, he naturally wouldn't just stand there and wait to be captured. A series of fierce exchanges instantly resounded through the entire blessed enclave. When Chu Xiu arrived, what he saw was a scene of a chaotic battle. It wasn't just Fang Yinglong and the other two. Linghu Immortal Mountain from the High Heaven sect had also come, and Zhong Qiushui had also joined in. The martial god sect's Sikong Jialua had also arrived from the southern region. They were engaged in a chaotic battle. With so many martial immortal level experts fighting, it was as if they were going to shatter the entire blessed paradise. The might of their battle was extremely terrifying. Lu Jianghe looked dumbfounded. What the hell? Why are these people from the Exalted Major so hot-tempered? Why do they look like they're robbing each other's wives? Why are they going all out? Chapter 12:19. When experts in the martial immortal realm fought, the power was so strong that even Chu Xiu did not dare to approach. However, after watching for a while, Chu Xiu suddenly said, "Let's go, the core of the blessed enclave is not here." Lu Jianghe pointed at the vertical eye in surprise and said, "This thing is so obvious, but it's not the core?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "The core is an existence capable of supporting an entire world. Although this thing is very conspicuous and its power is not weak, it itself is too weak. It might even be possible that the shockwaves from the battle between the martial immortals might shatter it." With that, Chu Xiu led Lu Jianghe to the place where the heart of the demon deity's body was. The place where the heart of the demon deity's body was located did not turn into a treasure as obvious as the vertical eye. There was only a small hill in this place. From the depths of the hill, there was a faint but powerful qi and blood power, and even a rhythmic beating sound could be heard. Almost all the warriors who entered the blessed enclave, except for those in the martial immortal realm, had gathered here to fight for this place. Of course, it was mainly between the southern region and the eastern region. In terms of numbers, the eastern region had too few warriors, and was at a disadvantage. Although there were several profound enlightenment realm elders from the High Heaven sect, they were still led by Xianyuan Wushuang. Although he was seriously injured by Lu Fengxian in the martial arts gamble, his physical cultivation was not weak. He had already recovered and his strength had improved. At this moment, he was holding halberd to resist the warriors of the southern region while scolding Lu Sanjin and the other warriors of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. "Trash! Don't you know how to defend the flank? Since Zhong Qiushui is not here, the Imperial Sky Pavilion only has a group of mobs like you?" Lu Sanjin's face showed a touch of anger. "Xianyuan Wushuang, who do you think you are to command the Imperial Sky Pavilion? You have been defeated by Brother Chu and Brother Lu. What, are you not satisfied? Do you want to fight me again?" Seeing that the people of the eastern region were starting to fight amongst themselves, the warriors of the southern region all revealed mocking expressions. Although the place where the blessed paradise appeared was relatively close to the eastern region, it still belonged to the southern region in the end. However, at this moment, an even more powerful aura descended. Chu Xiu's demonic aura floated and lingered in the air. His aura soared into the sky, stirring up the surrounding primordial qi and blood fog. It was incomparably dazzling. Lu Sanjin looked at Chu Xiu in surprise. He rarely saw Chu Xiu make such a high-profile appearance. Scanning the crowd, Chu Xiu said faintly, "You're all early, but I'm sorry, I'll be taking this." Before he made his appearance, Chu Xiu had already unleashed the heaven's sun, gazing at air skill's spiritual perception to the extreme. He could almost instantly see that what was being nurtured in the small mountain was the heart of the ancient demon god. Moreover, the strangest thing was that the outside of the heart was already petrified, but the center of the heart had condensed into a crystal. Moreover, there was even a faint life force emanating from it, connecting it with this world. This was the source of the blood fog in the blessed paradise. This was the core area of the entire blessed paradise. If it was destroyed, the entire blessed paradise would be destroyed as well. Due to this reason, it did not matter whether Chu Xiu kept a high profile or not. Strictly speaking, these people present here were his enemies. A heaven and earth profound enlightenment warrior of the Bliss Demon Palace was not one of Ming Xuanyu's subordinates. Instead, he had come with Yan Beifeng. He had never seen Chu Xiu fight before. When he heard this, he could not help but sneer and say, "You Eastern region warriors are weak, but you talk big. Do you really think that this is still the same as it was 10,000 years ago?" Among the Southern region warriors present was the warrior from the Battle God sect who had seen Chu Xiu fight before. He said in a low voice, "Brother Feng, don't underestimate Chu Xiu. I've seen him fight before, and he easily defeated your Bliss Demon Palace." F***CK. Before the warrior from the Battle God sect could finish his sentence, Chu Xiu had already unsheathed the formation-breaking sword in his hand. The powerful edge of the sword was hidden within the blade, and he suddenly slashed at the ground. The entire ground shook as if an earth dragon was flipping over. In the next moment, boundless saber radiance had already risen from beneath the warrior from the Bliss Demon Palace. It also conveniently forced the warrior from the Battle God sect to swallow his words, causing him to dodge subconsciously. The Blissful Devil Palace's cultivator was overwhelmed with shock. He quickly formed a series of hand seals, and dense devil chi circulated around his body, turning into a domain. Within the devil chi domain, the devil chi turned into evil spirits that howled and curled around his body. It was obvious that this warrior from the Bliss Demon Palace had just entered the heaven and earth profound enlightenment realm. Chu Xiu had immediately used his domain, because it was sufficiently powerful. The name deity domain wasn't an exaggeration. It was a supreme domain that had evolved from the integration of all his martial arts. However, this warrior from the Bliss Demon Palace had used his domain purely out of reflex. He had used his strongest technique. The evil spirits transformed from the demon chi in the domain devoured the power of the saber radiance. The cultivation method of the Bliss Demon Palace was quite impressive. It was actually able to devour the saber radiance completely before it reached its body. However, before the warrior could heave a sigh of relief, Chu Xiu's figure had already appeared in front of him. Chu Xiu's deity domain spread out and enveloped the warrior's domain. In an instant, yin and yang were reversed, and the 5 elements were reversed. Even all the laws of heaven and earth were strangled within the deity domain. In less than a breath's time, his domain had been completely destroyed. The Blissful Demon Palace's cultivator was overwhelmed with shock. His figure moved, and a blood mist condensed around him. It actually took the form of a blood dragon. It struggled and circled around him, stirring the laws of energy in an attempt to escape from Chu Xiu's deity domain. However, before he could do anything, a huge Buddhist seal appeared in front of him. The light of Vairocana burst forth, and holy Buddhist light floated in the blessed land filled with blood mist. However, it gave off an extremely sacred feeling, and there was even a faint sound of Buddhist chanting ringing out in everyone's hearts. The Blissful Devil Palace's cultivator was about to go crazy. When Chu Xiu first appeared, he was clearly covered in a fierce devil chi, and his attacks were extremely ruthless. He did not hold back at all. Why did he use a Buddhist cultivation method now? The demon used Buddhist techniques and in the end, It was so strong. That was incomprehensible. The Virokana seal smashed down, and a blood mist erupted around the Bliss Devil Palace's cultivator. The blood dragon was directly smashed into pieces, and the Bliss Devil Palace's cultivator vomited a mouthful of blood as he fell to the side. What are you waiting for? Are you just going to watch this guy flaunt his power in front of the southern region's cultivators? The Bliss Devil Palace's cultivator shouted loudly as he vomited blood. This was a dispute between two regions. The others were stunned by Chu Xiu's earlier display of strength. Now that they saw Chu Xiu's arrogance, they snorted coldly and rushed forward. This time, Lu Sanjin did not say anything. He immediately led his men and protected Chu Xiu from the side with Lu Jianghe. However, Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Brother Lu, this thing is very useful for my current cultivation base. Can you let me have it?" Lu Sanjin was stunned for a moment, but he immediately said, "Of course, no problem." Chu Xiu was a member of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Most importantly, Chu Xiu's strength was clear for all to see. Since he had spoken, Lu Sanjin would consider it, even if it was just for show. Moreover, Lu Sanjin still thought that he owed Chu Xiu a favor. A heaven and earth illuminating realm cultivator from the sword sect stood in front of Chu Xiu. The sword chi in his hand was like frost, and the piercingly cold sword gleam seemed to tear the world apart. Above Chu Xiu, a cultivator from the Kiliakosm sect set up a formation empty-handed. In the blink of an eye, a 5 elements formation was set up. It followed closely behind the sword chi of the sword sect's cultivator, and surrounded Chu Xiu. The blissful demon palace was powerful. They had 2 heaven and earth illuminating realm cultivators. One of them was severely injured, while the other sneered coldly. He took out a big flag and erected it on the ground. In an instant, a gust of wind blew, and demon chi roared. It condensed into a demon general holding a weapon and charged towards Chu Xiu. The cultivator from the Battle God sect was a little afraid of Chu Xiu because he had seen Chu Xiu fight before. At this moment, when he saw all the cultivators from the southern territory attacking, he clenched his teeth and followed Chu Xiu. At this moment, the 4 heaven and earth illuminating realm cultivators besieged Chu Xiu together. Even Lu Sanjin had a grave expression on his face. The heaven and earth illuminating realm cultivator from the High Heaven sect wanted to help, but Xianyuan Wushuang waved his hand and stopped him. "Wushuang, this is a dispute between the Eastern Territory and the Southern Territory. We can't really watch the other party lose, can we? At that time, we will be targeted by the Southern Territory." Everyone in the High Heaven sect knew about the grudge between Xianyuan Wushuang and Chu Xiu. He thought that Xianyuan Wushuang wanted to hit them when they were down. Xianyuan Wushuang said in a deep voice, "Don't worry, Martial Uncle Lin. I know what to do." As soon as he finished speaking, Xianyuan Wushuang shouted at Chu Xiu, "Chu Xiu, if you want me to help you, I can. After this is done, my High Heaven sect and the Imperial Sky Pavilion will share the treasures in this place equally. Is that too much?" Although Xianyuan Wushuang was arrogant, he knew what to do. He was the future successor of the Imperial Heaven Pavilion. If he always acted on impulse, even though the High Heaven sect wouldn't give up on him, they would definitely reconsider whether it was appropriate for him to be the successor. After all, he wasn't the only one among the younger generation in the High Heaven sect who had hopes of becoming a martial immortal. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "It's not too much. However, I want to take all of these treasures. There is no such thing as an equal share." "Chu Xiu, you're courting death." Xianyuan Wushuang's eyes flashed with coldness. He said to the enlightening profound realm warrior of the High Heaven sect, "Martial Uncle Lin, as you can see, Chu Xiu obviously doesn't want to cooperate with our High Heaven sect. We don't need to do anything. Let's wait for him to fight with the warriors of the Southern Territory, and then wait for an opportunity to strike." Seeing that Chu Xiu had already started fighting with the warriors of the Southern Territory, Martial Uncle Lin shook his head helplessly. These young people's view of the big picture was worse than the other. He could see that Xianyuan Wushuang still held a grudge against Chu Xiu. However, Chu Xiu still wanted to take all the treasures for himself at this time. It was simply unreasonable. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.